would
Yeah.
now.
Now we-
Thank you. Would you like to do the intro again?
Yeah, I think I'll introduce. So we're just so honored today at the Palestine Museum US to have with us Dr. Swee, who is scheduled to deliver the keynote address at the East Asia Conference at Harvard. And of course, that was eternally postponed. And we are honored that she's able to deliver that speech here at the Palestine Museum US. Dr. Ang was born in Penang, Malaysia, and grew up and studied in Singapore. She obtained her medical degree in 1973 and in 1976 her master's degree in occupational medicine at the University of Singapore. She's the first female orthopedic consultant appointed to the St. Bartholomew and the Royal London Hospitals. And in the 80s and 90s, she took time to work as a trauma and orthopedics consultant in the refugee camps of Lebanon during the Sabra and Shatila massacre. So she is both a survivor and someone who served during those times to save lives. She also worked for the United Nations in Gaza and the World Health Organization in the West Bank. And she's co-founder and patron of the British charity Medical Aid for Palestinians. She's also treated victims of the Pakistan Kashmir earthquake and served as a consultant in both trauma and orthopedic surgery for victims of the July 5th, 2005 suicide bomb victims of the Royal London Hospital. She's co-author of War Surgery and also Acute Care of the War Wounded, in addition to other orthopedic publications. And she's the author of From Beirut to Jerusalem. For those of you who are there in person, you're able to get a signed copy of her book tonight. And she's also told her personal story, Making a Small Difference, in another publication. Without further ado, we're so honored to have Dr. Swee Ang with us. We've shown her where she's featured in the film Gaza Hospital, where she's reminisces about serving during the Sabra Shatila massacre in the hospital that is now an apartment building. We've shown that several times. And we're just so honored to have this connection and give a space and voice to her story. Thank you so much, Dr. Swee, for joining us. And we're looking forward to your presentation.
Good evening, everybody, and thank you so much for being here and joining on Zoom. I really appreciate the Palestine Museum putting me on at literally just a few days' notice. Okay? And there's nothing I'm going to tell you that you don't already know. But I think it's quite important sometimes to reiterate what we know so well, and also to present to you my own feeling of my 42 years of working with the most wonderful people, so badly dehumanized in the West, wonderful people that took me a trip to Lebanon to find out the truth about them. Of course, I grew up in Singapore, a Zionist Christian. Never knew Palestinians existed, only know about the PLO until I volunteered in 1982 to look after the war victims in Lebanon. So I think, oh, I know what happened. We have to press here. You can't lose slides, you know. I grew up with the generation where you actually run slides on a carousel, and actually one slide will drop off. But you're not supposed to do that with electronics, okay? Because you know they're there, but yet it comes up blank. So you're in gremlins or what, you know? But so what's happening now?
Hold on a second. We need to open this again. Just
Okay,
give me a
can you
second.
do that? Are you okay? So I continue telling you about myself. So in 1982, I was a young trainee surgeon and I was working in London. I won't tell you my personal story because it's another hour, so we don't have that kind of time. So I came home one night and I switched on the television and I saw a country being bombed and attacked. And people were running away with bombs behind them and children being killed and pulled out of buildings with ashes all on their face, died, old people, hospitals, cemeteries, and completely demolished. And yet our BBC News runs a story that the IDF, the Israeli Air Force, is bombing Lebanon to get rid of a terrorist organization called the PLO. And of course, me being brought up as a Zionist Christian, I support Israel. But on the other hand, the more I watch, the more painful it becomes, because obviously the people who are killed, who are suffering, who are losing their homes, are not PLO members or terrorists. So I struggled very hard, wondering what's it all about, until I couldn't handle it anymore. And when Christian Aid sent down around a request asking for a surgeon to go out and treat the wounded, and whether I can join their team, I left my job and flew out. And I met wonderful people on the plane and in Cyprus. And of course, in the audience now is Mary Pat Carroll, and also listening in is Ellen Siegel and many other people like Ben Arloff, and we all went out hoping to do some good. We arrived in mid-August, in fact, mid-August, but we were not able to get into Beirut, which was the capital of Lebanon, because the Israelis were conducting a 36-hour continuous air raid. So we have to land in Cyprus and make our journey by sea into Lebanon when there was a ceasefire for a few days. So we went into West Beirut, and for the first time after crossing the Green Line, we saw the buildings which we saw on television, this time life-size, three-dimensional, with lots of debris and rubble, and exactly like what the television shows. So I think we're managing now.
Only use this.
Okay, I didn't touch anything wrong.
These two buttons.
Okay, right, only up and down. If I touch anything and wave my hands, you go blank.
I'll explain to you what happened.
Yeah.
That's the one stop.
Okay, so sometimes you wonder why, with enough trouble in our own countries, some of us get fixated elsewhere. But I put this up to remind myself that we are not alone. You know, we belong to the world, and the world also belongs to us. And we suffer together, and we prosper together. And we can only be free if others are free. So if I carry on about what happened in Lebanon and miles away, forgive me, because I see that as part of myself, okay? So that's my hospital, 900 years old, okay? For a country like the USA, 900 years is a long time. And I also cannot understand why they took 900 years to appoint a woman orthopedic surgeon. and also one that's not white, okay? A woman that's under 5 foot, you know, but that's it. So I will start from what's happening now. A lot of us are very troubled with 7 October, right? It's called the Al-Aqsa flood operation, when on the 7th of October, a group of Gaza fighters went in to take hostages in the kibbutz of Israel. So we're initially shocked and disturbed, but we are even more shocked and completely devastated as on the 8th of October, airplanes flew in and the bombing of Gaza began. You are talking about, you know, 200-pound bombs, devastating, and beginning of displacing people, asking them to leave northern Gaza to go to the south. And the tally of death, which I pulled out last week, you know, 25th of February, about nearly 16 months into the 8th of October, you know that 48,000 more were killed. So these are people whose bodies can be identified. But what cannot be identified is how many more were buried under the rubble and maybe already bodies are decayed. So all in all, it could be 60,000 that were killed. And then even now with the ceasefire, a lot of them are still starving. They're suffering from diseases, homeless. So even without the bombs falling, even without the drones killing, people are still dying. So either they die of disease, of starvation, or hunger, or they were directly killed by bombs. So the number of families that were completely wiped out, injuries, and 12,000 were so badly injured that they have to be evacuated, but yet not evacuated. And the hostages, how many of them still alive, you can only speculate. And the people that were rendered homeless in Gaza, the population of people in Gaza, according to the UN, before the 7th of October, i.e. 6th of October, is 2.3 million. As of now, they reckon that it's probably 2.2 million. And 2.1 million of them are homeless because their homes are completely destroyed, or they're forced to leave their home, what you call forced displacement into South Gaza, which is said to be a safe area, but as you know, it's not safe at all. And the worst thing are the children with no parents and no families, 35,000 of them. And what hurts me more is the medical personnel killed. This means doctors, nurses, and so on. And of course, this is a terrible violation of the Geneva Convention. Hospitals, medical staff are supposed to be protected so that they can save lives. Didn't happen. United Nations killed, okay? Journalists also killed. Mass graves being uncovered. And ever since the ceasefire of the 19th of January, nearly 700 bodies were recovered from the rubble. And of the hospitals in Gaza, which is 36, most of them are damaged. 35 of them are very badly damaged. And one of them is completely gone. So this was published by the UN on the 3rd of July. That's last year, okay? 17,000 children with no surviving family, and the number of children missing. So we're not quite sure they were missing because they were hiding somewhere or they're under the rubble. We don't know. But the actual number confirmed that as of July, that was many, many months ago, was 16,000. Now it's a lot more. Okay. And the Lancet, which is a very prestigious medical journal, reckoned that by the time they're through, maybe 186,000 people would have been killed or died of diseases. And with all that, you find that we have forgotten to address what's going on in West Bank. So these are the figures of West Bank from last week: 1,000 killed, 40,000 homeless, and a number of injured. So it is actually a disastrous situation. Then we talk about the ceasefire of the 19th of January, when it was a temporary kind of relief, but there are very few of us who actually thought that it can last. We don't know, okay? But what really moved me, you know, and like many of you, I cry every day because of Gaza. But when I saw the people displaced to southern Gaza, walking over rubble, carrying their belongings, nearly 500,000 on the first day of the ceasefire, walking north towards northern Gaza, over broken roads and rubble, to live in northern Gaza in worse ruins and rubble which even President Trump called a demolition site. So that's them. Anybody with any sense will ask one simple question. If northern Gaza was so badly destroyed, what made the Palestinians, who have already suffered 15 months of genocide with everything destroyed, go back to their homes who were completely destroyed? Why do they return to ashes and rubble? Is that something we have to understand about the Palestinian psyche? It looks as though they've just been through a genocide. Now they go to live in a demolition site, and then they might face deportation and ethnic cleansing, and they won't go. So that alone, you don't have to read history books, will make us ask a question. Is there something we are missing? Yeah. After walking 6 hours on rubble from the southern half of Gaza, below the Gaza Valley, walk to Gaza, they return to North Gaza, to what's left of their home. Yeah, these figures are dated. Just, just a status report in March last year about how many buildings were destroyed and so on. It's old. Okay, I want to show you this. This is Khan Yunis, second largest city in Gaza. And you can see how crowded it is and how many people live in it. I took this picture from a hospital, higher floors, in 2009. So if you drop a 2,000-ton bomb into this lot, how many people can you kill? And you keep bombing, and you reduce in a state like that. And then you said, fine, I finished with my job, you can return to your homes. So they return to this kind of home. And yet you return. And they return to identify the bodies of their families who are killed. It's under this kind of background that we learned about South Africa filing a complaint, an application on the 29th of December, just about 10 weeks following the 7th of October, saying that Israel is committing plausible genocide. It's a technical term because genocide usually is judged in retrospect. If you haven't killed everybody, then you might not fulfill the criteria of a proven genocide. But under the Convention of Prevention, the main thing is to prevent and not to let everybody die. And they say, there you are, I told you it's a genocide. No, you prevent it, okay? Yeah, so they have interim ruling on the 26th of how to prevent further killing in Gaza. So this is what happened. Prevent genocidal act, stop incitement of genocide, lift the blockade so there's food and water and electricity. And then also very important, do not destroy the evidence of genocide. Because if you knew that a whole building has been bombed and 300 people live in the building, so you can expect people being bombed alive and buried. You do not bulldoze it and clean up the whole place before the bodies are evacuated. But that was being done in parts of Gaza. And then the court will evaluate and allow food and water to go in because you do not starve people to death. You do not create drought. And that's a terrible way of killing people. But yet the following day, there was a call to defund UNRWA. And UNRWA, as you know, this is very basic for people who know a lot, okay? United Nations, War Relief Agency was created by the General Assembly in 1949 to look after the refugees of 48 Palestine. Because initially it was whether they return home, they not return home, when it was clear that of the 800,000 that were evicted from Palestine, they are not going home. So UNRWA was set up to look after them, and they feed them with war rations. They build tents, and the tents become shanty towns, and they vaccinate the children, basic education, and kind of public health education, and that's what they do. In fact, 6 million Palestinian refugees around the world, especially around the Middle East, were looked after by UNRWA. Without United Nations, that particular branch of UNRWA, the 6 million Palestinian refugees wouldn't have survived. And it's still going on. Of course, in Gaza alone, UNRWA employs 13,000 employees. And 2 of them were actually confirmed to be participating or participated in the 7th of October. But even if the allegation was 13 were actually guilty or not proven, out of 13,000, you cannot defund UNRWA collectively punishing the 6 million Palestinian refugees, depriving them of food, water, healthcare, and sanitation. You can't do that. It's a collective punishment. So, and you know all about the continuing things and so on, but I also want to share with you my recent experience in Lebanon, because as you know in the introduction, I'm a survivor of the Sabra Shatila massacre in 1982. And that was what changed me from a Zionist Christian into a friend of the Palestinian people. So every year, I will go on the anniversary of the massacre to visit the survivors of the camp and be with the family. And people say, what do you do there? Do you operate? No. The main mission of that is to go as a friend, to remind the people who have been so badly, traumatized and hurt and losing so many families that some of us did not forget, and will come back at least once a year to be with them, to remind them that we have not forgotten. So last year on the 17th of September, when I was stepping off the plane to the anniversary, I was redirected to the American University Hospital of Beirut. The reason being that 4,000 civil defense, ambulance drivers, firemen, hospital porters, some doctors, medical workers, have their pagers exploded in their hands. So that is the pager attack. It was touted by the arms industry that it was such a wonderful thing because it's target specific. It actually blows up in the hands and faces of those whom it is designed for. So there's no collateral damage, as though because you are harmed or wounded by pager, you are guilty. So I want to tell you, in a hospital where we operated on every day for one whole week, every one of my patients are civilians. None of them were Hezbollah fighters. And the attack was especially horrible because imagine if you hear your pager ring, you bring it up just to see who is wanting you, maybe it's a hospital, maybe, or whatever it is, and it just explodes in your hand. The hands are blown up like that. If you held it near to the face, it blow up your eyes. So many of my patients are at least blind in one eye and also suffer this kind of injury. And if you look at this hand, half the thumb is gone and you can't see any viable fingers. So after struggling, this is just one of them. After struggling for, I think, 2 hours, we managed to salvage 2 fingers, the little and ring fingers, and managed to cover this thumb. And I finished with this patient really late and I was really tired. So I went to the recovery to explain to him when he wakes up and say, look, you have your little and ring finger left, you got thumb, so you are able to hold objects, what we call a power grip, you know, or just a general grasp, but you will never have a normal hand. And, you know, but you will have some function. And also to explain to him that I'm not local in Lebanon, and I might have to go back to England, but you'll be looked after by good doctors. And it was very strange. He also lost one eye. And through the nurse, he asked me, doctor, what do you think? How do you feel? And of course, at that time, I got to tell him, I'm very sad. I'm so sad for all my patients. You know, maybe you're not dead, but it's going to be a struggle for the rest of your life. And you know what my patient said to me? Doctor, please don't be sad. Because we all stand for justice. We all support Gaza. And if the price we pay is being wounded, is the price that we will pay. And at that stage, I just couldn't face him anymore. I have to leave, you see, because it was so emotional. But I want to show you, so after 2 hours of struggle, we did manage to make the ring and little finger look like a ring and little finger, and we gave him a thumb. So he will have a functional hand, but not a normal hand, eventually. And this was how we recreated it, we wired everything. But little do I know that when I left Lebanon the next week, this patient, in fact, all the patients, all 4,000 of them, could not continue with the treatment because Lebanon was bombed. And you find South Lebanon was bombed first and everybody was fleeing. And so the patients that we treated are displaced. We don't know where they are. Some of them did come back eventually, and my colleagues were looking after them, are still looking after them, but we don't know about the rest. So these are figures. Patient attack, 4,000 Maine, and then the air bombardment starting a week later, and the land invasion, making 1.1 million Lebanese homeless and displaced, and injured 16,500 and killed 4,000. So it is quite important because many people ask me, oh, is it such a horrible situation, the recent event? I put this map up to remind ourselves that it's not a recent event. It's something which has gone on for so long. And I think if there's nothing else that make people understand the history of Palestine are these simple maps. You know, what was Palestine? What was it like before 1948? It's the map on the extreme left. It was a country full of people, Arab, Muslims, Christians, and Jews, living in a very civilized country with culture, with everything, with newspapers, with schools, with universities. And then Palestine became partitioned in 1947. And of course, the country I live in has a big role in playing, in creating the tragedy, because I'm talking about I'm talking as a Brit now, okay? Though I don't look like one. That Britain was a country, when it was given the mandate to look after Palestine, decided to give away Palestine. And that's how the tragedy started. So when it couldn't happen in 1947, you know, this resolution 181 partition of Palestine into a part for Jews and part for Arabs. But then what happened in 1948, the almost 50-50 partition became 22-78. Palestine became even smaller. So from 1948 onwards, you can map on the third side, you can see that what's West Bank and Gaza was only 22%. Israel took 78%, and Palestine completely disappeared from the map of the world. And the Palestinians became refugees living in the West Bank and Gaza. And when you talk about the two-state solution, it was almost like the map, the last map on your right, even worse now, okay? Originally, the two-state solution was giving back the 22% of Palestine to the Palestinian people to call their home. But even that did not happen. You have ongoing settlement of Palestine, you have Gaza being blockaded. So it is a story that's ongoing, culminating in the genocide and the proposed ethnic cleansing today. So this is 1982, when I first visited Lebanon. I was like many young doctors, wanting to do something to help people, very much like some of my young colleagues, watching the bombing of Lebanon and the genocide of Gaza, wanting to use their skills to help somebody. So I resigned and I came into Lebanon, bombed to bits, blocks and blocks of buildings. These are pictures I've taken myself anyway. And the 11th floor building sucked in by what we call an implosion bomb. These are the big bombs. You're talking about 2,000 pounds, when they explode and it consumes all the oxygen, sucking in the whole explosion. It's called an implosion versus an explosion bomb. So this building buried 200 people in it. So as a young surgeon, I have to learn humility because I can never save these people. It would take something more than a medical team to do something. So the PLO did evacuate, because if they did not evacuate, the bombing was promised to affect the whole of Lebanon. And you must not forget that the PLO was a refugee organization. The people of the PLO at the time, they were not Lebanese. They're refugees in a country called Lebanon. And their presence has brought on continuous attack on the country for Lebanon. So basically, there's no way they could have stayed. They evacuated. So everybody thought, great, there's a ceasefire. But I learned very quickly that a ceasefire is not peace. Anyway, with the ceasefire, we were seconded, the Christian aid team, to work with the International Red Cross. And that was me. There was one time when I was young. Okay. And I was sent to a hospital called Gaza Hospital. And Gaza meant nothing to me. Okay, I'm just a doctor growing up in the UK. But now Gaza meant so much. And I know why is it called Gaza Hospital? Because the Palestinian refugees from Gaza became refugees in Lebanon. And within the refugee camps, to remember the places they come from, they built hospitals. They call it Gaza Hospital, Haifa Hospital, Ramallah Maternity Home, and so on and so forth, so that their children growing up as refugees, by just looking at the hospital, attending the hospital, know where they are from. The Palestine Red Crescent Society ran 13 clinics and 9 hospitals, and they treated everyone free, Lebanese and Palestinians alike. All 9 hospitals were bombed, 8 of them flattened. Gaza Hospital was spared. The military actions stopped after 2 floors. I will tell you later on what happened if you ask me. Remember to ask me, okay? This is the top floor of Gaza Hospital, bombed from the air, shelled from the mountains. And then I looked out of the 10th floor of Gaza Hospital and saw this kind of structures, you know, the remains of buildings that were bombed. And with the ceasefire, I saw people coming back, old men, old women, bringing back wounded children to rebuild their homes, to clean the rubble, put up curtains, and start life all over again. And very soon I found out that these were the Palestinian refugees. Yeah, and I worked with them, the doctors and the nurses. And of course, more important than that, I learned about their culture. You see, if we just say that Palestinians are terrorists, they're bad people, they treat the women badly and so on and so forth, they're Arabs and so on, then we dehumanize them. But if you're with them, you will learn of their generosity, their compassion, their steadfastness, and despite their own suffering, and despite knowing that I'm so Zionist, always defending Israel, they treated me as one of their family. And they taught me Palestinian history. Sometimes when they sit down and tell me about their villages and their homes and what happened during the Nakba, but sometimes just by showing me their beautiful embroidery and each special design from a village in Palestine where they come from, villages that were destroyed, they no longer exist. I think it's about 513 villages completely flattened. And they make beautiful dresses. And the civilization, they translate their poetry to explain to me. I've learned so much. And I kept asking myself, why did I not learn about these people? Now I understand. Because you ask yourself too, how can all of us watch the killing in Gaza, the genocide, and yet at the back of the minds of many of us, we still think there must be a reason for it. And the reason is dehumanization. If we if we call the Palestinians a people that's subhuman and that they're not like us, we prepare ourselves to allow them to be destroyed. But if you see them face to face and you know that they're human beings like ourselves, and for those of us who believe in God, that they are our brothers and sisters, then you will never allow that. So I think the first thing about supporting Palestinians is to see them as one of us. And once you make that transition, you will do everything you can to be with them, to support them, and everything you can to prevent them from being treated so badly. And when you see an olive tree being uplifted, or being uprooted or bulldozed, you will know that the farmer has spent 14 years nurturing that tree. And to him or her, that tree is part of the family. So everything becomes precious. And that's why after 42 years, I'm still here with you. But it didn't happen like that. 3 weeks into the ceasefire, Israel announced to the whole world that the PLO cheated and left behind 2,000 terrorists. And therefore, they are invading Lebanon by land, by tanks. They shelled all the way into Beirut City, destroying the suburbs, and a contingent of tanks moved towards Sabra Shatila, the refugee camp I worked in, and sealed the refugee camp so that nobody can escape. Remember, at this time, the people has just come back to rebuild their homes and lives because USA has guaranteed peace. So they came back and rebuilt their lives, hoping the schools to reopen, even though they're refugees, but there's a chance to life. And life is a precious thing, even no matter how difficult. You try and safeguard it so that at least your children have a chance. They were not given a chance. That the population of Sabra Shatila rose to about 120,000 or maybe even more. It was all surrounded. Nobody can escape. The shelling came closer and closer. And then people who are just shot point blank, sometimes brought in dead, were brought into a hospital, some of them so badly wounded that I can't save their lives. And like the old man here, he taught me how to cook Arabic coffee. You know, Arabic coffee is not put hot water in coffee. It's not, you know, you put it on a little fire and you cook it. That's Arabic coffee. He's dead. Children. More people. And at one stage, after operating for about at least maybe 48 hours, I went up from the basement operating theater to look up two very special patients. It's a mother and a baby. They were told to go into their homes because it's safe. And when they actually went in, they shelled the homes. So everybody died except the mother and the baby. So they were alive. We operated on them. And I came up to make sure that both of them are, and to leave instructions with the nurses. And I found the mother and the baby both in shock. They need blood transfusion. By that time, the hospital has only 1 unit of blood left. So I told the nurse, give it to the mother. But the mother refused to have the blood. She wanted to give it to the child. And what she told me in Arabic, which was translated, said, "Doctor, I'm going to die, but God will look after my baby." And of course, she died very soon. But I also took this picture. It's very important for you to see. Both persons in the picture are nurses, okay? The man that was sniped and nearly died was a Bangladesh volunteer nurse, a very senior kind of theater nurse. They shot him. The lady that was looking after him is a Swedish nurse. And of course, she's blonde, she got blue eyes, and she got white skin. So this is called profiling. It's both racial and other ways. So she was looking after him. At the time when I took this picture, the whole hospital has got thousands of refugees sitting all over the hospital. We ran out of blood, we ran out of food, no water, and people were frightened. And at the time, I still thought that Israel was fighting terrorists, but it's not true. It was a massacre. The last patient I treated with my team was this boy. He was brought in. He looked like 11, but I was told he's 13. He was lined up with 27 members of his family, and all of them were gunned down. The whole lot of the adults died, but the little boy was actually kind of buried under the bodies, and he survived. He was brought to the hospital. We operated on him, and today he's still alive. I tell you his story later on. But the next morning, soldiers and armed men came to the hospital and want every single foreigner out. And at the time, I know what's going to happen, because if we left, they would have come in and shot all our patients. You remember the Swedish nurse? She refused to go. So she said, "I will not go because we have 30 very ill patients. I will stay behind and look after them. You can take the rest of the team." Until very recently, I could not tell her story because some people were, you know, maybe she doesn't want me to say it, but she saved everybody while the rest of us were taken down the road. And when I came up of the basement operating theater, turned the corner into Main Street, and I found that the camp was massacred. Bodies actually kind of decaying in the hot Beirut sun. Remember, it was September. And at the time, it all clicked. And now I remember my Palestinian friends talking to me about the massacres their family has, you know, suffered and so on. So this is yet another massacre. And now it's very interesting because I always ask my medical student, but I can't ask you, okay, because you are too senior for me to ask that question. And I always ask my young students, what would you do? What would you do? Well, there was an offer to be evacuated out of the situation to get counseling and all that, but I refused because you cannot leave things like that. You know, how come this was Beirut, full of journalists to cover the war, and how could we allow that to happen? Every dead body will have with them a Palestinian refugee identity card. So, you know, they are people and we allowed them to be killed again and again and again. So you cannot leave them. And they died refugees, their children will grow up refugees, and probably again will die refugees in a world that actually turned away. This is not possible. So I stayed. Maybe I was a bit out of my mind. And so a lot of my colleagues left, but I came back to the refugee camp when it was open, and I found that the houses, the little camp houses, they've rebuilt again, you know, bulldozed and shelled. If you look at this building, you can see that it just began to repaint their house. The green paint was fresh, not even dry. Yet the people were gone. At the end of the refugee camp was this kind of appearance. Some of you might know it's a mass grave. Why do you know it's a mass grave? Because all the homes around have been bulldozed and the whole area cleared. And then you can see heaps of earth being brought in to cover up something. Nearly 1,000 bodies. The bulldozers came and flattened everything, and white lime was poured over them so that the flesh dissolved. So that was the biggest mass grave of Sabra Shatila. There are other smaller ones. Yeah. And each year, that's where we go to pay our respects. And I found orphans everywhere standing before the walls where their parents were murdered. Children without homes when the Lebanese winter comes. And of course, I will tell you the rest of the story of Munir. Munir was shot 3 times, but he survived. I went to visit his home because I know 27 members of his family has died. And his grandmother has walked 20 kilometers from South Lebanon to visit her family, only to find 27 murdered. And originally, I wanted to comfort her, to say to her that her grandson has survived. But her grief was too much. So she said, "Doctor, you know, what can I say? What can I say in the memory of my children? Our doves are still here, our carnations give fragrance, and our sparrows sing their usual songs. Yet my children were nowhere to be found. Beirut, you took all I had. You took my last hope in life, and my heart lies dead in the streets. Abu Zuhair, my eldest son, was cruelly cut off his roots on your soil. My heart is full of remorse towards this uncaring world. With 200 stallions, 100 ships carry my pain away. Mother, says my children, come visit our grave. I go to your grave and tenderly embrace the stones, ask the stones to give way so that you can breathe. I tell them, look after my loved ones. I've entrusted them to you. How I envy those of you that were present when my children died. Did you let them die thirsty? or were you merciful enough to give them a drink? I ask every passing bird to carry my love and anxiety to you and come back with your news. But yet, my calls remain unanswered. Mountains of distance are between us now. Our hearts have died and our tears have dried for all the men and women who have died. God Almighty, give us patience, and my children, my beloved, be a lantern to your path, and may God show you the holy way. Doctor, please go away. You reopen all our wounds. We have nothing left to say. So that was very painful, and I left her house feeling quite dead and numb. But I came back to the main road of the camp, and I found bodies, for identification. And yet, this group of children ran towards me because one of them was my patient, and all his friends came along, and they started telling me about how horrible the massacre is and all that. And suddenly one of them say, she's back. The Chinese doctor is back. She survived. Palestinian children are very strange. They always insist I'm Chinese. They refuse to believe I'm British. And they always tell me, no, Dr. Swee, you're not British, okay? The British very bad, gave away your country, so you cannot be British. So, okay, all right, I'm Chinese, okay? Yeah. But then suddenly, they begin to line up and say, take a picture of us. And say, take a picture of us so that you can show our picture to people all over the world. And we are the children of Shatila, and we are not afraid. So at the time, you take a picture, and then when I went, look at this picture, behind them are their broken homes, right? They're living in rubble. In front, of course, are the mutilated dead bodies, which I've cut off from the picture because it's too much. But between death and destruction and the stench of decaying human flesh were the Palestinian children. And you talk about resilience, you talk about resurrection, but these are the Palestinian children. And as long as they're Palestinian children, there will be a Palestine. So at a time when, the future of Gaza, the future of West Bank is so dark, I want you to look for the signs of life. I want you to look for resurrection, and you'll find them. I'm going to finish very soon, but just a few more slides, and then I close and you can ask me questions, okay? So Gaza Hospital was closed, and Alan Siegel, an American Jewish nurse who taught me a lot about the history of Palestine, said, Swee, we are going to testify in Jerusalem. I said, what? Yeah, you must. It's your duty. You have to go to Jerusalem to tell the Israelis what the army has done. And of course, at that time, 500,000 Israeli citizens demonstrated in Tel Aviv, calling for an end to the war and an investigation into the massacre. And they set up what we call a Gahan Israeli Commission to investigate. So I thought, okay, maybe it's my role to speak up. So we spoke up. And of course, as part of the deal, the IDF took me to the Holocaust Museum. And I found this, I took a picture, why do we remember? But even in remembering, it is not fair, because some people are allowed to remember, encouraged to remember. Some people are forbidden to speak about what happened to them. Their memory were erased. And that's what I'm trying to tell you today. Right. But there are enough of us alive who care enough to remember and to speak up. Peace never returned to Lebanon, right? You see this from 1982, when USA wants to impose a peace for Lebanon, but it didn't happen. It broke down. It didn't break down. Somebody decided to put an end to it. I've just dealt with a whole lot of mutilated patients. And when I came back, I learned about the horrible bombardment of Lebanon. And then since then, Matt has been sending team back. I led the first team, went back to operate. And this is Cristiano, you might know him, you know. And he's a happy chap, you know. Hello, Swee. Chris, he said, don't look so sad. You know, the women brought me chocolate. I don't know whether to laugh or cry. I said, Chris, do you know how you look like? He said, I don't know how I look like, but I'm happy to see you. And some of our volunteers, this one, Mama Rita, 80 years old, okay? Every morning she'll drive a big mobile clinic, going around all the displaced people, feeding the children with milk, health education, check their teeth and so on. So I have many years left to live up to her. 1987 is the International Year of Shelter for the Homeless, but yet that's how Shatila camp looks like. So when it rains, everything collapses, and the people have to move out to live, you know, in displaced shelters like that. People who demolish their tents to build cities and hospitals, now again reduced to becoming refugees. But yet it was in one of these that I learned about something else. There was an uprising in Palestine. That was the first Intifada. And the refugees in Lebanon told me, you better go to Gaza and look after the wounded people there. So this was the first Intifada. It was a peace unarmed, civilians versus army. And yet, look at the people that were wounded, the people that were arrested, the children that have been put in prison for throwing stones. So that was my first visit to Gaza. And you look at women and children demonstrating against one of the most powerful army in the whole world. And I worked in a Christian hospital. Important, because Gaza is not a bunch of Islamic extremists. Gaza has got the third oldest Christian church in the whole world, the Porphyria Church, which has been destroyed last year. But this is another one. It's the Ali Arab Hospital, built by the British missionary. It's more than 100 years old. So I work with Palestinians. We never ask a Palestinian whether they're Christian or Muslim, because they look at you. To them, it doesn't matter. You know, we're human beings. But it was a brutal uprising where people were just grabbed and beaten and all the bones are broken. Rubber bullets shot point blank to kill someone. And I was in Jabalia camp. Jabalia that's been destroyed again and again and again. And there's nothing left now. Still wage, long curfew of 30 days. And these were people coming to the feeding points to get their rations. And a whole generation of beautiful young girls, babies, growing up to be the Intifada babies. You know, during the first Intifada, it's forbidden to wear the colors of the Palestine flag. So it's a special occasion when the mothers dress their daughters up to have a picture taken like that. Made in USA. And yet, Gaza is one of the most beautiful places that I've come across, the beach of Gaza. Small wonder that President Trump wants to take over this beach and build a resort. Look at that. You know, it's so beautiful, white sand, blue sea, sunset. I'm not lying. These are pictures I took myself. It's not fake news, okay? This is the Gaza sunset. Springtime in Gaza. okay, blossoms, Gaza, citrus. This family has been planting citrus for 150 years. Dates, okay, so beautiful. This is a special farm, garden. You see, it is really paradise. But on the 25th of December, 2023, the Israeli army came, took over the farm, killed a lot of farmer employees, and also the brother of the farmer, took the main farmer into prison, tortured him for 40 days, and took over their farm as a command control center. And of course, this is Salman Abu Sitta's book. And actually, it's not a terrorist book. The Atlas of Palestine actually was, you know, it is a book telling how the Palestinian refugees could return without driving out Israelis. But, you know, I don't think the person who actually kind of drove everybody out, killed everybody, understand what it's all about. He was looking at it, but I don't think he's reading it. So they occupied this farm for 42 days. And when they withdrew, they destroyed every single farm structure, killed all the farm animals, bulldozed the olive trees, but I want to finish with telling you what happened. I just got a message from the farmer who has been tortured for 40 days with a ceasefire. His daughter called me and said, you know what Papa did? Papa has hired a bulldozer to clear all the rubble. He's bought a tent so that he can get people to come and live in a tent. He's ordered 2,500 olive saplings he's going to replant. But my friend say, you know, Papa is 77 years old. He thinks he's 17. I said, no, he's planting the trees for you. Because Palestine lasts forever. Shifa Hospital, destroyed. So now as a medic, we know that it's our responsibility to rebuild it for them. And by God, I think we will, okay? So the rest of it is about Castlet and so on. I stop here. It's a history that goes on with a lot of suffering, a lot of tears, but a lot of hope with a strong people who refuse to be erased. So I'm very proud that I'm able to journey with them for 42 years. Yeah, and it's such an honor. This was Castlet 2009. And it was rebuilt. The schools were rebuilt. The wounds were healed. Families were wiped out. The young children came to life and grew up. 2014, yet another war. And we know it's not over. We know that the Palestinians are here to stay. And God willing, we'll stay with them. Okay.
Thank you so much, Dr. Swee, for your incredible presentation.
If you have any questions, please raise your hand and we'll try to take a few questions from the audience here. And Krista, see if you can pick up 1 or 2 questions from the audience on the Zoom.
Sure.
It doesn't have to be a question, it could be a comment. Yes, could you come here? Yeah.
You got to speak into here.
Just come up closer, yeah, because we want people to hear you here also. Yeah, go ahead.
Hello.
Lower it down. Go
Oh,
ahead.
I'm sorry. Hello, thank you so much for this
Yeah.
incredible presentation. I was confused. I wasn't sure how much of the how many of the photographs were from 82, were from currently, were from the intifadas.
Yeah.
Were they intermixed?
Yeah, they were intermixed because it covers 42 years of my journey with the Palestinians.
Did you,
I took some of them,
yes,
but like 2014, I was put in prison trying to go to Gaza and deported. So when I came back, I just took it off the internet. Past that, I took the pictures myself. Okay.
may I ask, when was the last time you went to the Middle East, either Beirut or Gaza?
Beirut was last year, treated a major injury.
You were operating then,
Yeah,
you were
yeah.
seeing patients then.
Gaza was 2018. I went in the flotilla and they intercepted the flotilla and took all of us to prison.
Mhm.
So I was
The
in,
ship you're talking about.
yeah, the ship, the Freedom Flotilla.
Mhm.
You see, it was a little fishing boat. We had loaded with us lots of antibiotics because we knew that in Gaza, a lot of them were wounded. It's great. Yeah. It was a great march of return, and where the Israelis were shooting up the legs of the Palestinians. So they have no antibiotics. So we have about 50 boxes of very, very potent antibiotics which we were taken in Gaza. But in international water, we were intercepted and we were taken all to prison to Israel, Ashdod, Devon prison, because they released a statement to the newspaper saying that a group of terrorists trying to infiltrate Israel and they successfully intercepted them. Well, I was accused as one of the terrorists. Yeah. That's 2018. Yeah.
Well, the question is what happened to the supplies that they were bringing in on the ship? Come
They-
closer.
They did not even offer to take it into Gaza for us. Okay. They not only took all our antibiotics, they also took all our belongings.
What year was that?
2018, the Great March of Return. Yeah. I didn't cover that because I thought, I don't want to go on. Yeah.
Yes, sorry.
I'll repeat this question. Yeah. Okay. I didn't come over here.
Come and stand here and talk loud, so it will pick you up. Just
Okay.
talk.
So the picture of Chris John.
Yeah.
Was that in 82, that picture?
No, Iano I took in 87 because
87.
I took a mission, a medical team, and Iano and I go back to 82, right?
Yeah,
And we kept in touch. Then I knew that in 86, he went to work in Shatila and stayed there. So in 87, I make it a point, to bring some supplies into the refugee camps and to meet him. You see.
that was during the siege then.
Yeah. He has not left Shatila camp since 86.
The Greek Student Association at Yale brought Janu to Yale.
Yeah.
I don't know, maybe 84 or 85, and he
Yeah.
gave a talk.
Yeah.
And that's remarkable. And
In
then
82, he was arrested and I think spent several months in Israeli prison and then came out in 83 or something like that.
And then he went on to become the head doctor of
Yeah,
the
that was
Red
after
Cross.
that was after 88 when he finally was taken out of Shatila camp by the Hezbollah because there was a ceasefire and they have to evacuate all the Palestinians so that they don't get killed. And Yano came up with it.
And I wrote to him a couple years ago about Syria, and he wrote back.
Yeah.
Is he still?
Oh, yeah, he's alive. He's very much
He
alive.
smoked so
Oh, yeah,
much.
Yeah, I know, yeah.
Excuse me, did somebody else have a question there? Maybe I could,
No, the gentleman with the coffee, we want to say something?
It was just a comment.
stand here.
I remember the coverage of the
Talk a
attack,
little bit louder.
on the flotilla. And there were actually several people killed during that attack.
That is a different one. That was
That's a different one.
2010.
Okay,
2010, there
that
was
early.
Mavi Mavara,
Okay,
and that was a Turkish flotilla, a big
Yeah,
one.
yeah.
And they just killed 10, and then one more died, a lot of injured. So that was supposed to put an end to people coming in by boats,
right.
and it didn't end.
I just wanted to make a comment about the Sabra and Shatila massacre. The killings were not done by the Israeli soldiers. However, the Israeli soldiers prepared the scene for the massacre.
Yeah.
They surrounded the camp. They won't let anybody into the camp except for the right-wing Lebanese militia who did the killing. And for 3.5 days, the Israeli soldiers were watching from a perch what was going on. They lit flares to allow the militia to find the people and kill them. And there was evidence that they were there for a number of days during the massacre, because there were Hebrew newspapers were found there, and other food items and things. They were all point to the fact that there were Israeli soldiers supervising the massacre that took place. And you know, the fact that they didn't do the killing did not mean anything. It was just worse than doing the killing, because they're the ones that enabled it in the first place. Just like the United States has enabled the genocide in Gaza by providing Israel with all the military, the bombs, the political cover, and the support, and the media of the United States, along with other Western media, participated in enabling the genocide by not providing the facts about what was going on, by keeping the people in the dark, and by misrepresenting the information, and accusing the Palestinians of committing a lot of atrocities that they did not commit. So the enablement is a lot worse than the doing. And we cannot forget that enabling something is just like doing it and more.
Yeah, I make it very simple. Suppose I want to murder someone, okay? And I make sure that he cannot get out of his house, and I pay a mercenary to go in and kill him. That's
Yep.
it.
Krista, are you hearing us there? You're muted.
Yes, I am.
Are you
So
hearing?
there are a few audience questions. I can just mention them and you can decide what you want to address. Some people are wondering how you avoid burnout or overwhelm, and I would add to that, what gives you hope? And what would holding Zionists accountable look like in your eyes? You have some people in from Australia that would love to have you come do a presentation there. So you can let them know if you're interested. And then also, people are interested in how they can address the Harvard administration about the event that was canceled, if you provide a few more details about the event, so they have something to address toward the administration there.
I will start with Harvard first, okay?
Sure.
I'll start with Harvard first, okay?
Mm-hmm.
You know, normally I do fight back, okay? But
Mm-hmm.
that is a very special case, because it's not the faculty or the administration that wants to cancel me. They didn't say cancel, they postpone. But the circumstances were that they are threatened, there's death threats, they have their details published on the internet. You know, it's a process called doxing. I've got to look it up to see what I mean, DOXING. It's
Mhm.
particularly bad, you know, and so everybody knows where you live. They can chuck rubbish in your house and throw a brick into your window and so on. And then the students were threatened with having their visas withdrawn, and the lecturers were threatened with being fired. So in fact, so they asked me, what would you do? He said, look, I don't want anybody hurt. You know, I would love to come and speak to you, but when I accept speaking to a group, I accept the fact that it might be cancelled or postponed, and even when I come in, I might be deported, right? So that's a price you pay for speaking up for Palestine. So I understand it completely. So it is not the administration, it's a particular group that's gone out to do this.
What was the group?
We don't know. You see, unless you employ lawyers to get a Freedom of Information Act, you know, to expose who actually did it. I know the
Does Harvard know who did it?
No, they don't, I think.
You know,
They are very distressed. I know that. So a lot of people ask me, you know, that I should complain, but I really don't think it is the people who invited me that wanted to cancel me. Yeah.
and the other side of the question from Krista.
Oh.
Chris,
Now,
Yeah.
Crystal is talking about going to Australia, of course. I think it's my duty to speak, but I don't have to necessarily come to Australia because it's a long journey. Of course, I can do it by internet. Okay, we can have a long session and talk. I think those people on Zoom today, you know, could hear us quite well. So there's no need to actually for people to raise money to ask me to come. We don't have to do that. Yeah, and frankly, there's nothing I say that you don't already know. But it is important that we get together to support each other, to encourage each other, you know, because it is a difficult struggle. What's the third question? There's one more question which I forgot.
Yeah, just how you avoid burnout and overwhelm, and what gives you hope.
I think the main inspiration for hope is the Palestinian people themselves. Like, you know, what's happening in Gaza is terrible. But you look at the 77-year-old, which has come out, you know, being tortured and, you know, having the dogs bite him while he was in prison, you know, naked and all that. Coming out and say, I replant. That gives me hope. The children who are fearless, you know, and say that we are not afraid, who actually, you know, are so courageous that they inspire me, okay? So it's a duty. My Palestinian colleagues, who, especially the doctors and nurses, you know, just 2 days ago, I just read this thing about this Palestinian doctor who was interviewed on one of the American networks and said, why don't you evacuate to the south where it's safe? And his answer was really moving. He said, it took me 14 years to be a specialist to look after my people. I did not do that. I did not become a specialist to be safe or to benefit myself. If I left in a situation where there are no doctors left, what will happen to my patient? And of course, he was killed with his whole family. So when you actually have the honor of working with people like that, I think burnout is true. You get very tired. And right now, I'm quite tired, you know, because I've slept an average of only 3 hours over the past 48 hours, but it's okay, it's tiredness. Burnout, you just sleep for 10 hours and it'll be okay. Yeah, but, you know, you constantly put yourself and you understand what kind of people you're working with. You know, people say, oh, Gaza is the moral compass of the 21st century, right? You hear
Mm.
that in the press all the time. You ask yourself, why? Why Gaza? Why Palestine? You have a people who have withstood all kinds of things and are still standing up. You know, and even my Palestinian friends say, Swee, we cannot escape because you're Palestinian, but you, what's the matter with you? You can always up and go. And of course, you know who asked me that? The famous Gada coming. I said, Gada, you know, after being with you all, after being your friend, after seeing how you suffer, and after seeing how you resist, after learning so much, if I up and go, do you think I deserve to be called a human being? And she laughed, yeah. You see, so it's nothing to do with me. You know, it's plenty to do with all of us together.
I think we're gonna try to wrap this portion up because we need to leave some time for Swee to sign some of her books for people who wanna buy them and have them autographed.
Yeah, of course.
Thank you, Krista, for being with us and for your great greeting of the audience and fielding some questions and staying with us. And thank you to the people who joined us on Zoom. We hope to see you next weekend for our further programming. We're gonna end the Zoom session, if you don't mind, Krista.
Oh, sure, no problem. Thank you, Dr. Swee, again. And I wish I were there to get a copy of your book signed.
Yeah,
You know, I'm gonna get one for you. Don't worry.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much. I'd be honored. I hope to meet you in person someday. Thank you
All
for
right.
being here. And thank you for everyone for tuning in today on Zoom and in person. And see you at the next gathering.
Yeah. Bye.
Okay, masalama.